Essence of Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 2, Sankya Yoga. The second chapter can be classified into four parts: Arjuna's surrender, verses 1 to 10, Jnana Yoga, verses 11 to 38, Karma Yoga, verses 39 to 53, and Sthira Prajna, a Jnani's description, verses 54 to 72. Eventually, Arjuna realizes his helplessness and surrenders. The Gita teachings begin with this verse. The Lord said, "You are grieving for those who should not be grieved for. At the same time, you are speaking the words of the wise. The wise do not grieve for the dead or for the living." This very important verse is a condensation of the entire Gita teaching. Ignorance is the cause of all human problems. By ignorance, Krishna means self-ignorance. Therefore, self-knowledge is the solution for samsara. Arjuna is suffering from two problems. The first immediate problem is whether to fight in this war. The deeper fundamental problem is the universal problem of samsara, attachment, sorrow, and delusion. Krishna takes three lines of arguments to solve both of these. From a philosophical angle, this is the one that is stressed in the Gita in verses 12 to 25. From an ethical angle, this is given some importance. From a logical angle, Krishna gives this the least importance. The philosophical angle consists of teaching Arjuna about the true nature of Atma. Arjuna is the eternal Atma, and so are Bhishma and Drona and everyone else. Krishna says that Bhishma and Drona are not killed. Not only that, Arjuna is not a killer. Just as the self which is in this body goes through childhood, youth and old age, so too at death it passes into another body. The wise man is not disturbed by this. So, if I am eternal, what is birth and death? Krishna says birth and death are nothing but the self changing the medium of interaction, that is, the physical body. It is the same self that passes through the aging of the body. It is the same self that leaves this body at death and takes on another. Krishna then stresses the permanence of the Atma and the impermanent nature of the Anatma, the body-mind complex. The unreal can never come into being. The real never ceases to be. The conclusion about these two is seen by seers of truth. Know that Atma to be the imperishable one by which all this is pervaded. No one can bring about the destruction of this changeless one. Krishna is saying that the Atma is real and the Anatma is unreal. How? If we heat a pot of water, the water becomes hot. However, if the heat is removed, the water becomes cool. Therefore, we conclude that heat is not an intrinsic property of the water, but only a borrowed, incidental property. However, fire is always hot, so heat is the intrinsic nature of fire. Similarly, the Atma is eternal, so existence, consciousness is its intrinsic nature. It never ceases to be and is therefore permanent or real. Anatma is impermanent, so existence is only an incidental nature. So Anatma is impermanent or unreal. The permanent real nature is technically called Satyam. The impermanent unreal nature is called Mithya. Therefore, Krishna is saying that the Atma is Satyam, Anatma is Mithya. We also learned that the Atma pervades everything. How can something be so? The closest example is space. We first think that there is space in a room, but then we realize that the room is in space. Not only that, everything is in space, and space pervades everything. Atma is like that space. An important corollary is that Atma is formless, because any form is a limitation marking the end of that principle. Next, Atma is free from any type of change. It is changeless. It is said, "Perishable are these bodies which belong to the eternal, imperishable and unobjectifiable self. Therefore fight, O Arjuna." Krishna now says that Atma is not an object of knowledge. In other words, Atma is never an object and always the subject self. He who deems it, the self, a slayer, and he who thinks of it as slain, both are ignorant, for the self neither slays nor is slain. He further says that Atma is akarta and abhokta, neither a doer of actions nor an enjoyer of the resulting karma. Krishna concludes the description of Atma and points out that our real nature is consciousness. The nature of Atma. Atma Nityaha, eternal. Atma Satyaha. Consciousness is independently existent. It does not depend upon matter for its existence. Atma Sarvagataha. Consciousness pervades everywhere. It is not a localized phenomenon like the body. It is an unlocated principle. Atma Nirvikaraha. Consciousness is not subject to any change. Atma Aprameyaha. Consciousness can never be experienced as an object because it is ever the experiencer subject. Atma Akarta and Abhokta. It does not perform any action and therefore does not have any punyam or papam. The Vedantic approach is to never impose the teaching on anyone. The seeker has to accept the teachings on his or her own terms. So Krishna considers the possibility that Arjuna is not convinced by his prior philosophical arguments regarding the Atma and switches to logical arguments. No one can escape death. Hinduism says one who is dead will be born again. One should accept the fact that everyone dies and is reborn. This is a choiceless situation. When there is a choice, we should take proper action. When there is no choice, we should calmly accept it. Sorrow is nothing but resistance to accepting reality. Next, Krishna switches to ethical arguments. Krishna points out that Arjuna can gain punya by fighting in the war. Even if he is not interested in that, he will incur papam by not fighting. He points out that everyone may think that Arjuna is a coward. Krishna concludes his three-pronged arguments in the first phase of his teaching. He transitions to the topic of Karma Yoga by telling Arjuna what his attitude should be in preparing for war. Regarding happiness and sorrow, gain and loss, victory and defeat alike, prepare for war. In this manner, you will not incur sin. No human being can permanently expect success in life. Krishna does not teach how to succeed all the time. Krishna only says you should learn how to face both success and failure with mental equanimity. Now, one may ask, if self-knowledge is the solution to samsara, and Krishna has imparted this knowledge already, why do we need Karma Yoga? Even though Jnana Yoga is the only means of liberation, everybody is not fit to enter Jnana Yoga. Just like we need to learn arithmetic before attempting calculus, we need to prepare the mind with Karma Yoga before attempting Jnana Yoga. Krishna defines the essence of Karma Yoga. To work alone you have the right, and not to the fruits. Do not be impelled by the fruits of work, nor have attachment to inaction. Krishna says that as a human being, due to free will, you have control over your actions, but you don't have control over the results. Krishna doesn't say that you have zero influence over the results. He is pointing out that while you are a contributing factor, you don't control the outcome. Imagine a farmer has tilled his land, fertilized it, sowed the seeds, and watered the crops properly. However, a flood arises and wipes out his crop. The farmer does not have control of the outcome, but obviously, by doing all his work properly, he maximizes his chance of success. Similarly, in every action, do your best, but you have to accept the results because you don't have a choice. So the key to mental balance is to do your best where you have a choice and accept any choiceless situation without complaint. This is the eternal conflict between fate and free will. Your fate is determined by your past karma. Your free will affects your current results and your future karma. Krishna details the benefits of Karma Yoga. Endowed with wisdom, evenness of mind, one casts off in this life both good and evil deeds. Therefore, devote thyself to yoga. Yoga is skill in action. Krishna contrasts two types of people: karmi, who perform actions for the sake of results, and the karma yogi, who performs the right action without expectations. Action without the proper attitude will lead to more strain and tension. The skill of the karma yogi is in converting that same action to liberating karma. This conversion is brought about by not a change in action, but by a change in attitude alone. Krishna concludes by saying that Karma Yoga will lead to mental clarity and prepare one for Jnana Yoga. Arjuna wants to know the practical benefits of Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. How does a jnani conduct himself in the world? Are there any physical differences between an ordinary person and a jnani? The Lord answered, O Arjuna, satisfied in himself by himself, when one gives up all the desires obtaining in the mind, then he is said to be a man of firm knowledge. A jnani is happy with himself. He is self-sufficient. He does not require any external factor to be happy. He has discovered fullness within himself. As a consequence, he does not seek anything from outside and has given up all desires of the mind. But wait, doesn't he want food to eat and shelter to live in? Shastras distinguish between two types of desires, allowed desires and others. Allowed desires must satisfy three conditions. They must be dharmic or legitimate. Example, earning money for a better life. They must be moderate. You must still devote time for spiritual progress. They must be non-binding. If an unfulfilled desire upsets you, then it is binding you. You are a slave to that desire. Another way to say this, make your desire into a preference. This type of desire is also called Shuddha Kama. A jnani may have Shuddha Kama. Krishna concludes the second chapter by saying that a person becomes one with Brahman after acquiring Atma Jnanam or self-knowledge. Om Tat Sat.